Notice of this meeting was provided in the following ways. Notice published in the Courier News, notice posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, notice made available to the township clerk, notice sent to the Courier News and the Star Ledger. Ms. Buckley, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Waller,
Present.
Councilwoman Cahill,
Here.
Ms. Corcoran,
Here.
Reverend Kenny,
Present.
and Madam Chair.
Here. Mr. Barlow, would you read the open public meeting notice?
Sure, Madam Chair. In keeping with the guidelines that have been disseminated by the Department of Community Affairs, the planning board has complied with same with regards to the Open Meetings Act. In addition, any application that will be heard this evening has had the logon information for the online meeting platform put forth in their notice. Members of the public who wish to be heard will be afforded an opportunity as if we were in an actual physical space, and it's appropriate to go forward in this fashion.
Thank you. You can see the flag over my right shoulder. Can we all recite the Pledge of Allegiance at this time? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we swear in the professionals?
Sure, I believe we got Mika, Ron, and Jim Clarkin. You all raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you give before this board this evening will be the whole truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any changes to our agenda tonight?
Yes, Madam Chair. Number 17, Dini Communications, which is 24 PB02/12V, preliminary and final site plan for 1034 Stelton Road. The notice was defective. They are going to have to correct that and renotice. If they correct their notice issues, they will be heard on the September 11th, 2024 meeting. If anyone is here for Dini Communications, you will be getting a new notice in the mail, but that matter will not be heard this evening and most likely will be on for the September 11th meeting. Number 18.
I'm on video. What are you saying?
Excuse me?
You can, not behind me.
Hold on, I don't know who's talking.
Sorry.
Okay. So number 17 is off Dini Communications. They will renotice. Number 18, 24 PB08/09V LRN Properties LLC. Both variances, minor subdivision. That's been postponed till September 11th, 2024. Was carried at the applicant's request because of a conflict. There will be no further notice for that matter. If you are here for number 18 LRN Properties, which is 60 Normandy Drive, that matter will be heard on September 11th, 2024, and there will be no further notice. Those are the only two changes to the agenda, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members of the board, can I have a motion to pay the duly audited bills?
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair.
Clerk, and I'll make the motion.
Ms. Cahill, you made that motion?
Ms. Corcoran did.
Oh, thank you. Can I get a second, please?
Madam Chair, Reverend Kenny, I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Waller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran,
Yes.
Reverend Kenny,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. Item number 8, adoption of resolution to memorialize action taken on July 10th, 2024. Well, none. Item number 9, adoption of the minutes from the regular meeting of July 10th, 2024.
Madam Chair, Reverend Kenny, I make a motion, adoption of the minutes of July 10th, 2024.
Can I get a second?
I'll second. Dawn Corcoran.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mayor Waller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran,
Yes.
Reverend Kenny,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. Item number 10, discussion. To discuss whether the property designated as Block 201, Lot 1.01, and Block 202, Lot 42.02, shown on page 2 of the Piscataway Township map, being commonly known as 1776 and 1791 South 2nd Avenue, meets the criteria to be determined as a non-condemnation area in need of development.
Good evening, members of the board. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. So James Clarkin of Foresight Planning, I will be delivering this report to you this evening.
Thank you.
First, before we get started, a quick housekeeping item. Last night, so I'm sharing it right now, the council passed resolution 24307. Mr. Barlow, do we need to mark this as an exhibit before I go forward? If not, that's
did he
fine.
hear you?
I'm not
Did he?
sure, but if not, we can do that later. But basically, it's updating resolution 24268, which was the original one, asking the planning board to investigate these two lots. And this updated resolution is adding, and you can see it in this bottom paragraph here, it's the 180 linear feet of South 2nd Street, which is about 12,000 square feet. It's just lying between both of those lots, and it's a county road. But we do want to include that in the study area, so that's one contiguous lot. So that's just the, sorry, go ahead. Never mind, I thought I heard someone. Yeah, so that's just the quick housekeeping item. So my study does include that area. So I will get started. So I'll start with the study area description. So we have before us two lots, block 202, lot 42.02, which is the larger of the two, and then block 201, lot 1.01, and then that 180 linear feet of South 2nd Street I just mentioned. If you want some context, there is a map at the end that shows both, or the whole entire study area together. And then for further context, this is in the northern part of the township, so right where the border is with the borough of Denellen. And actually, both of these parcels are at the dead end of South 2nd Street, and it's actually the dead end of that street is actually the physical border between the township of Piscataway and the borough of Denellen. And from a zoning perspective, block 201, lot 1.01 is in your M1 manufacturing zoning district, and then block 202, lot 42.02 is within the light industrial zoning district. And also for the record, these two properties are 1776 and 1791 South 2nd Street. Let's see here. So yeah, so when you combine these two lots plus that portion of the county road, we're talking about 14.5 acres. So block 201, lot 1.01 is only 1.65 acres in size. It's much smaller than the other lot. And this one is closer to the railroad tracks for context. And I'll go over the photos later in my report, but really this area can be accurately be described as basically an outdoor storage area for vehicles, equipment, and junk. And based on our review of the building and zoning records, it does not appear to ever had an approved use. So really looking at historical aerials, it's always been some sort of parking or storage lot over the years. There's no improvements of any kind. And as I said, we didn't find any building or zoning records for this lot. We did find one police record for criminal mischief with damage that occurred this year in 2024. But other than that, there was no significant reports related to this property. And as I said, the photos will give you more context of the current conditions that are there. So across the street is the larger lot, block 202, lot 42.02, 12.7 acres in size, and actually has 3 large structures standing on the lot. So tonight I'm going to talk about them as the western, the middle, and the eastern structures. So the western structure is a 2-story building with loading docks, and it actually straddles the border of Piscataway and Denellen. And in my research, I found an April 2023 study from Denellan's planning experts saying that they found this structure on the Denellan side to be in need of redevelopment. When I visited the site, it did not appear to be occupied, and definitely was in a state of disrepair, which I'll get into more. The middle structure is an operating 1.5-story warehouse with some loading spaces, some improper outdoor trailer storage, and other outdoor storage. And then finally, there's an eastern structure, which is another long 1-story warehouse, very similar to that middle structure. Oops, went a little far. So for this one, there are actually a lot of police records. Just some examples include simple assault in 2005, several thefts in 2006, theft and movable property in 2009, a couple citations for outdoor garbage and illegal dumping in 2011 and 2018. So as I get into the photos, you'll definitely see the current conditions and how some of these police records could occur, especially with the violations related to garbage and illegal dumping. Because when I was on the lot, I saw evidence of damaged vehicle storage and storage of large dumpsters as well. So yeah, I will get into that as we get down to the photos. So just last housekeeping item, I think I already mentioned the 12,000 square feet of South 2nd Street. Not much to say about it. It hasn't been improved in some time. No sidewalks, nothing, no other really existing conditions of note for that portion of the study area. As always, we take a look at NGDP's records for these properties. So we do the normal review for wetlands, contamination, anything of that nature. So there is actually a stream that runs through the bottom portion of this study area. So that's block 202, lot 42.02. It runs from east to west, but it's really only the bottom portion. And so that is really the only area of the property or the entire study area that had records of wetlands. It was only a small portion, so it's likely that if redevelopment moves forward, either that part will not be developed or they'll work with DEP if they wish to develop that portion. But of bigger note was that lot is also a known contaminated site. And from the information I could find, it had about 4 cleanup cases associated with it, including a C2 remedial level, which is basically a known source or release of contaminant into the groundwater. So it definitely seems like there's some open cases for remediation for this property, which could make this a brownfield redevelopment, which is definitely viewed favorably because we're taking an older, possibly hazardous use and transforming it into something more productive. So that was everything I found from an environmental perspective. So I think that redevelopment could definitely be good for this area. Further context surrounding land uses. So it's kind of a mix because you're near Front Street and Denellen, which kind of has like a mix of commercial, industrial, but then also south and west, and maybe even a little east, there are residential neighborhoods, mostly of a single family nature. So it's definitely a diverse set of uses surrounding this property. And then also Columbia Park within Borough of Denellen is south of this study area as well. Moving on to a master plan perspective, judging by the age of the area for both Township and the Borough of Denellen, especially when you look at the uses along the railroad tracks, it's definitely an older developed section of the Township. So I think that this fits in with your 2005 master plan in that as vacant developable land diminishes, older areas will be more prime for redevelopment. And I think this study area definitely fits within that context. So with that background, I'm going to move on to the photos so we can really get into the conditions that I found during my investigation. So first, we're starting with a larger lot. This is the one I just discussed where it has the 3 structures on it. So this first photo you see is that middle structure. Actually, both top photos are. You can kind of see the degradation of the pavement and some stormwater ponding. Then you can kind of, so this was panning left from that position. So this is the eastern structure, the other warehouse. And you can see that's pavement degradation there as well. On that lot, I did find some storage trailers that may not be entirely proper for the type of use, but as we move forward, you can see the outdoor storage of these dumpsters, which I don't think meets code either, and definitely could be potentially hazardous. But as we move further, these two photos are of specific significance that I wanted to discuss. So obviously you see the ponding, but in the rear is more of what I really want to talk about. And I think the bottom photo is a better photo. It looks like some sort of vehicle use is going on, whether it's storage of damaged vehicles or some sort of auto shipping industry. It's definitely not permitted use in that zone, and does not seem to be a proper use of the land, and definitely improper outdoor storage. A couple of concerns of, leaking hazardous materials, whether it's gasoline or coolant or something related to vehicles, but definitely something to take note of. And I think bolsters the situation with respect to in need of redevelopment. So these next photos are the western structure. So this is the one that actually straddles the border of Denellen and Piscataway. So definitely clear signs of abandonment, broken glass, broken windows. Actually, when I was on site, the alarm was actively ringing. There's degradation of the brick, of the loading docks, definitely signs of disrepair and abandonment. So some of these are some further photos of that structure. And then I think some other signs of abandonment is just, no one's there parking or taking care of the regular day-to-day maintenance of the parking lot. Here's a good photo of the broken glass and the abandoned nature of the indoor portion of that western structure. All right, now shifting to block 201, lot 1.01, which is across the street from this one. So this is the one next to the railroad tracks. Like I said, there's really no improvements of any kind. It's kind of this haphazard collection of construction equipment, trailers, tractor trailers, different pieces of vehicles or junk throughout the site. It's really just crushed stone pavement. I'm going to kind of just roll through. Feel free to ask any questions, but it does not appear to have any improvements or be related to anything nearby. So you see some old tires, some unknown barrels, storage containers. Yeah, here you go. Here's a better view of the whole lot. So behind those trees is where the railroad track runs, and that structure way in the back is actually on a different lot. It's an existing, no, I'm forgetting, like a pipe fitting factory, I believe. Yeah, and so here are some more photos of the existing conditions. No real structures, just a bunch of trailers and junk. So with respect to applying the criteria, I'm going to start with the larger lot with the 3 structures on it. So based on my investigation, the clear evidence of the outdoor storage of trailers, dumpsters, junk, and even cars that are in need of major repair and body work. And also combine that with the police records we found for illegal dumping and garbage citations on that property, I find that criteria A, B, and D apply. So A is specific to that western building where it's clearly in a state of disrepair. It's unsafe and definitely not, wholesome for working conditions. And I think if it's left in its current state, it could represent continued dangerous conditions. So criteria A applies. Criteria B also applies to that western building because it's a discontinued use of manufacturing. And it's also, I found some evidence that it was vacant since 2018, according to the Borough of Denellen study. So I think that abandonment and that vacancy has allowed the structure to fall into a really bad disrepair situation where it's really untenantable. And then criteria D applies to the entirety of the lot and all the structures on it. So it's really the misuse of the property, whether it's the storage of trailers, the vehicles, all those conditions. I find that it's obsolete, faulty arrangement, and just not a good land use with an obsolete layout that I think is detrimental to the safety, health, and welfare of the community. So I think these 3 criteria apply to that lot. with respect to block 201, lot 1.01, since there's no structures, I don't think that criteria A and B could apply, but I think that criteria D does apply. Basically by virtue of the illegal and improper storage of all the junk that's on that property. It's clearly not permitted, and it's a faulty arrangement, excessive land coverage, and really not a good land use for the community at all. So with those two lots discussed, all that's left is just the portion of South 2nd Street. So as I mentioned, the existing conditions don't really meet any of the criteria. It's just minor wear and tear, no sidewalk, hasn't been repaved in a while, but I believe that a redevelopment may include improvements such as that portion of the county road. And so, yeah, the conditions themselves are not detrimental, but I think it's very necessary to include for the effective redevelopment, so that you have one contiguous parcel that can be redeveloped through a proper redevelopment plan. So it's my recommendation to include that portion of South 2nd Street, should it be vacated by the county, to be included as part of the overall study area for in need of redevelopment. And then finally, for the last two lots, I think that the smart planning criteria H can apply. We had the Denellen, New Jersey transit station close by, so that can really give us possibly a range of housing choices, walkable neighborhoods, a sense of place, or being offered via redevelopment of the study area. So to wrap it all up, it's my recommendation that this board and then subsequently the Township Council determine that this study area is in fact in need of redevelopment by virtue of block 202 lot 42.02 meeting the 3 criteria, or 4 rather, and then also block 201 lot 1.01 meeting criteria D and H, and then also including the 180 linear feet of South 2nd Street within that study area. I think this area could definitely benefit from redevelopment, specifically the areas of contamination that I mentioned. And I think that's the crux of my report, and happy to take any questions.
Mr. Clarkin, Reverend Kenny here. In regards to 201, lot 1.01, did you find that those trucks are abandoned, or are they being used or worked on? It looks like
it's kind of hard to say. I would say a mix, Reverend, because like actually this photo in this top left kind of seems like it was being worked on, but others just seem like they might have been there for a long time. Like this trailer here, who knows if that's been moved, but I think there was another photo where the hood of the tractor, like this one doesn't look like there's an engine in it, so I don't think that's moving anytime soon. But this one, this bottom one here, the green one, that looked like it was being actively worked on. So there could be some sort of outdoor maintenance going on, which is definitely not allowed by code or probably DEP either.
No, that's what I thought, because I didn't see any plates on any of these vehicles except for
another good point.
Thank you.
Another good point.
That's the trooper eye in you.
Members of the board, are there any other questions of this witness?
Madam Chair, I just want to add some information to the fact. When Mr. Clark was talking about the illegal dumping going on, there's actually more illegal dumping than actually was in the report, because periodically, almost once a month, somebody drops a load in the middle of the street down there at Department of Public Works. Either our Public Works in Piscataway or Denellen Public Works has to go and pick up on a regular basis.
Okay, that's for the record. Any other comments or questions? Then let's open it up to the public, Ms. Buckley. Let's see if anybody.
One step ahead.
If
Would you check?
anyone has any
Okay.
comments or questions about the discussion item, you could just hit raise your hand. No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Close to the public. Okay, Mr. Clarkin has completed his testimony, members of the board. What's your pleasure?
Madam Chair, this is Dawn Corcoran. I'd like to make a recommendation that the properties be designated as a non-condemnation area in need of redevelopment.
Do I have a second?
Reverend Kenny, I'll second that motion. And while I'm seconding the motion, I'd like to thank Mr. Clark in regards to this the redevelopment study. You did an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you call the roll, Ms. Buckley?
Mayor Waller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran,
Yes.
Reverend Kenny,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, just
yes.
Out of an abundance of caution and because of the time frames involved, I took the liberty of preparing a resolution recommending to the council that the property be designated as a non-condemnation area and redevelopment, and if the board so chooses, it'd be appropriate to adopt a resolution at this time.
Would someone like to propose a adoption of the resolution that Mr. Barlow has prepared?
Madam Chair, Reverend Kenny, I'll propose the resolution.
Approval of the resolution. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Councilwoman Cahill.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Waller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran,
Yes.
Reverend Kenny,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. That completes that item, right, Mr. Barlow?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, then we'll move on to item number 11, amended redevelopment plan for block 9201, lot 46.20, also known as Rivendell Terrace, Zanzalari Way. Mr. Clark,
Ancillary way.
Zanzalari Way.
Yes, also we'll be presenting this to the board tonight. Thank you. This one's much quicker. So I'm really just sharing the addendum I put together for this redevelopment plan, and I'm just going to go through it. So back in 2015, Township Planning Board adopted a resolution to prepare a redevelopment plan for what was then known as Block 9201, lots 46.06, 46.07, and 46.11. Lester Nemenzahl was actually hired to do this redevelopment plan, which I'm going to refer to as the plan from now on, for the planning board. So that redevelopment plan he put together was dated March 6, 2017, and was subsequently adopted later that year by both this board and the Township Council. So since that time, these three lots within Block 9201, which that plan was prepared for, have been consolidated. So now it's known as Block 9201, Lot 46.20, and it covers an area about 20.8 acres in size. So this is actually a case where the redevelopment plan has come to fruition. So it envisioned a multi-family residential community of market rate and low and moderate income affordable rental units with on-site parking, recreational facilities, open space, and then stormwater as well. So it's actually been constructed, it's occupied, and I would consider it a successful residential redevelopment that is called Rivendell Meadows now. So this is near the border of Edison Township. So the reason for this addendum is really specific to the recreational facilities. So on page 3 of that redevelopment plan back from 2017, it specifically mentions a clubhouse building, community pool, including a kiddie pool, a tot lot park area, fitness trail with workout stations, and open space areas as permitted recreational facilities. All that has been built and looks to be working well and successful. What the proposed redeveloper is looking to do is add to those recreational facilities. As you know, since this was written in 2017, some new things have emerged, specifically something called pickleball. Has become much much more popular, and yes, exactly, yeah. So the designated redeveloper wishes to build 2 pickleball courts, a tennis court, and a half basketball court, in addition to those facilities I already mentioned. They feel that these amenities would be relevant to today's public, and they think the children and the residents of the development would benefit from such amenities. So through this addendum, I'm amending that plan to add the 2 pickleball courts, the tennis court, and half basketball court. They do have 6 parking spaces planned to be built near those courts. So this addendum would include the construction of those parking spaces. However, I should note they're not required. It's really more for a convenience. It's not to meet the parking requirements. And then other things like fencing and lighting will be included. What was originally proposed in that part of the redevelopment or the development plan was detached garage structures. They actually already have some built, so they feel that they are no longer needed and that the site can function well without those garages, and that their elimination doesn't cause any parking variance issues. So I think that this proposed amendment is consistent with the goals and objectives of the master plan and of the original redevelopment plan. It's really just tweaking it a little bit for these newer recreational facilities. So that's that's what I'm here proposing for this addendum, and I can take any questions.
Members of the board, do you have any questions of Mr. Clarkin at this time? Hearing no one, Ms. Buckley, would you open it to the public? Or I'm going to open it to the public. Would you check and see if anyone in the public wishes to ask a question of this witness?
No one, Madam
Chair. Okay.
Just the orthopedic surgeons who are having a field day with all the new ACL and rotator cuff tears from all the pickleball playing.
Oh, they're having a ball, all right. Okay, closed to the public. Members of the board, what's your pleasure on this request?
Madam Chair, Dawn Corcoran, I'd like to make a recommendation that the amended redevelopment plan be adopted.
Do I have a second?
Councilwoman Cahill will second that.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Waller.
Yes.
Councilwoman Cahill.
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran.
Yes.
Reverend Kenny.
Yes.
And Madam Chair.
Yes.
And
I believe
again,
Mr. Barlow has prepared a resolution.
you beat me to it. Correct. It would be appropriate if the board wants to adopt the resolution at this time.
Do I have a recommendation that we adopt from the board?
Madam Chair, Reverend Kenny, I'll make a recommendation that we adopt the resolution.
Second, Councilwoman Cahill.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Waller.
Yes.
Councilwoman Cahill.
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran.
Yes.
Reverend Kenny.
Yes.
And Madam Chair.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Item number 12, 24 BB 15 River Road Estates LLC for a final major subdivision.
Good evening, members of the board professionals. My name is Tim Arch, attorney licensed for the state of New Jersey, here representing River Road Estates. This is a final major subdivision. You will recall that we were back before for a preliminary subdivision to create 14 single-family homes at that location. We're proud to say that we have, I believe, complied with all of the conditions of the preliminary approval to the staff's satisfaction. And so we are here tonight to ask for the final so that we can perfect that subdivision and move on to the exciting stuff of actually building the homes. We do have, I do have Eric Ballou, our engineer, here in case there's any questions that the board may have. But I think just a confirmation that the staff agrees that we've complied with all the conditions of the preliminary is sufficient. So I will I'll turn it over to see if we can get that confirmation.
Madam Chair, and this is Dawn Corcoran. They have complied with all of their conditions of the preliminary approval.
Thank you. So are we going to have any testimony tonight?
No.
I don't believe it's necessary to have any testimony. Again, all the conditions are there. We've met all those, and I believe we are ripe for the final subdivision at this time.
Madam Chair, just so the record reflects, preliminary major subdivision with certain deviations was approved by this board on November 8th, 2023. There were a number of conditions of approval, and as Ms. Corcoran has indicated, the Piscataway Township professionals are confident that those conditions have already been met. So we usually split it to preliminary and final just to make sure that the applicant complies, which they have done. So unless the board, Madam Chair, or the board members want, I don't think it's necessary to take testimony based on Ms. Corcoran's representations, and therefore it would be appropriate for a motion to grant them final major subdivision.
And members of the board, would anyone like to propose that approval
Madam Chair,
of the application?
go ahead, Reverend Kenny.
Madam Chair, I would like to approve this application to go forward with the final approval, and that this application move forward.
Do I have a second?
Second, Councilwoman Cahill.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Waller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran,
Yes.
Reverend Kenny,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
Looking forward to those beautiful homes.
We are too. If I may, just a question on the agenda that I had, there was a discussion item that I was also associated with that I think was listed before that. I don't know if it's changed from what the board has right now.
There's an updated agenda and it was no longer on this agenda.
It will be on for September.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure I'm around.
No
Thank you.
problem.
Thank you, Ms.
Okay,
Collins.
Mr. Arch. Item number 13, 21 PB 31 M&M at Hose Lane Phase 2 LLC General Development Plan.
Good evening, everybody. It's Irina Elgart. I'm with Weingarten Law Firm. It's good to see everybody again. Oh, sorry. There we go. So we were here last in July. I had submitted a letter to Mr. Barlow, and I apologize that it was late, but getting it to you today. However, I just wanted to indicate in the letter that we would be looking for a vote for tonight on our application. My understanding from the last hearing in July was that the board asked for an extension so that their traffic engineer could take a look at our study, I guess read over the testimony from our traffic engineer and provide us with some kind of review, whether it was traffic or bike path related, whatever it was. But we had not received that report. I was surprised to not have received it, I guess. So that's where that letter came from, that we're looking for it. We didn't receive it. My understanding also with regard to some of the items from last month was that when we were discussing CME's letter, there were certain things that the applicant was going to note on the plans or however it may be in terms of like the clubhouse. I know that we needed to note that. And just to provide clarification with regard to that, we are providing landscape buffers and things like that. But I always imagine that would be something that we would do during resolution compliance. So, that's one of the reasons why I wrote the letter, just so that there wasn't a misunderstanding that if we weren't going to put any testimony on, there was really nothing further to discuss, I guess. In terms of the timing schedule, I know there was discussion with regard to that. And again, I wanted to clarify it because we put in the fact that there will be 5 phases. We didn't put any timetable to it, particularly because we are here to find out what the vesting schedule is. Without the vesting schedule, we really don't know whether it's a 20-year vesting schedule, 15-year vesting schedule. And so we're proposing 5 phases. Typically it's 100 units per year, but that would be something that would be changed, once we get to the first site plan. And it's almost similar to the discussion that we had about the developers agreement. There's certain things that the board needs to decide before, we can put into the developers agreement, and that would be one of those things. So we're here, we've submitted all our proofs, and we believe that the project is a good project and that, it's not going to cause an unreasonable adverse impact. Really, that's what the board needs to find. It's zoned for exactly what we're proposing. We're not seeking variances. If we do need any variances from any of the standards, it's not we'll have to either come back and amend the GDP, or we'll have to come back and, and get those variances through site plan, depending on what they are. So I leave it to the board. And hopefully our proofs were adequate for what you're looking for. But again, this is a GDP concept plan. We want to move forward. We want to proceed with the engineering and provide even more information as the process moves forward. So thank you.
Can I just, Madam Chair, Ms. Elgar, just
Go
by
ahead,
way of,
Mr. Barlow. Mhm.
just by way of clarification then. So what I think the discussion that took place in July is, in terms of a phasing plan, a more established time frame of, say, phase one, it would be contemplated would take 3 years. I think that's the single family homes. And then phase two, which may be townhouses, might take 2 or 3 to kind of give the board a little bit more direction. What you're, I think, saying is, if the board tells us this is a 10-year GDP plan, we back the numbers into that. Like, once you tell us and adopt a GDP plan of X amount of years, then the applicant can say, okay, we got 10 years, and this is a more established timeline of when the phases might get done. Is that what
Correct.
you're saying?
Right. We don't want to represent a time period that's not necessarily going to be realistic either. So, that's kind of what we're looking for, some guidance as to what the vesting schedule is that the board would approve.
Okay, so if hypothetically the board gave this as a 10-year vesting schedule for the GDP,
Right.
then you're saying that at that point you can tell the township, okay, 10 years, this is a better timeline. Phase one, we think would be done June of 2026. And phase two, and understanding those are not written in stone, and the GDP acknowledges if you need more time because of market conditions, financing, whatever else, you are more than welcome to come back and say, look, we thought we'd be done in 3 years, we're going to take 4 for that, right?
Right.
So
Right.
you need to know how long the is, and then you can give the town a more specific phasing schedule.
Right. I mean, we
Okay.
know only the phases, and I can tell you, on average, it's about 100 units per year, maybe, more or less, given depending on what needs to happen in those phases. And again, that's part of the engineering that has to be done.
No, I understand that, but if phase one is the single family homes, and
Right.
there's 20 of them hypothetically, you should be able to, once you know.
I think that, I mean, the single families, for phase one, we have, I think it's 193
Okay.
market rate units and 14 affordables.
Okay, but I think aren't the single family.
Single family. I didn't know if you were using that as an example. If that's
No.
the case, that's fine. I just wanted to correct it if
Okay.
we're not using it as an example.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. You'd like to know the length of the GDP, and then you can give the township a more accurate reflection as to when things might get done.
Right. And I think, 3 years per phase is sufficient.
Well, I'm not suggesting 3 years per phase. I'm just. Okay.
There's about the same number of units per phase. I'm just looking at.
Madam Chair, can I jump in? And I want to make a motion.
Yes, Mayor, go ahead.
I want to make a motion. It has to be 5 years. Because Counselor, quite frankly, I want to put you folks on a tight leash. You have zero credibility with me. So I think 5 years, Mr. Barlow, and if they got to come back to the board, let them explain why.
Why do we have zero credibility? I'm sorry.
Because you do. You have zero credibility.
How is that?
Counselor, I'm not going to get into a discussion with it. My motion is for 5 years, and I hope my fellow board members will support that.
I think, Ron?
Mayor, I just have a quick question. The 5 years, what is that for? 5 years to complete the entire job? 5 years to get something done? I'm just looking for clarification so I know what we're up against here.
5 years that you have to have roughly 60% done. And then I believe 2.5 to 3 years after that to have everything completed.
Okay, so I mean,
This is not,
we could agree to it. I mean, I guess like a 10-year, that's something.
we're not doing 10 years, counselor. It's not happening. It's not happening.
I think, but you just said it was
It's
5.
like you're asking for an annuity plan here. I'm sorry, it's not happening.
Well, we have every
I've seen too much go on in this town with folks come in and talk a good game, and then they use every excuse under the sun, and it doesn't get done. It doesn't get completed. So everybody, it's not just you, other people are going to be on a tight leash now. Zero credibility. Take it or leave it. That's the way I'm going to vote.
Well, I mean, if you're entitled to vote however you see fit, so.
Madam Chair, if I may, this is Dawn Corcoran. Hi, Irina. Just a
Go
question.
ahead.
If the GDP was in fact approved this evening, how soon until you start filing for the formal site plan application? Like, are we like 6 months out, a year out? Like, what is your timing with the filing?
I really can't say. I don't know if, Ron, if you have an idea, but, I wouldn't want us to commit to something that we can't do, so.
Fair.
Dawn, to answer your question, probably if we would get the approval, adopt the resolution. I mean, listen, if we got the approval tonight, hypothetically, we would be looking to pull the trigger to start the site plans. You're probably 3 to 4 months out from completing site plans on a site this large.
Sure. Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may just ask then, is it absolutely necessary to take a vote tonight on that? Or can the applicant wait till, I don't know if we have room at the next meeting or not, but maybe just for the board to have a little more information as to this whole phasing? I mean, I'm inclined to vote along the lines with the mayor just because we, again, as he said, not specific to you, but just that a lot of times applications come through and then they don't get completed in what the applicant initially sort of has the high hopes to complete, let's say, aspirational things happen. And I think to the mayor's point, he's just trying to make sure that this doesn't become like a generational sort of project, if that makes any sense.
It's understood. I mean, we would appreciate the vote tonight, and if it's 5 years, that's something I'll have to take back, and it's going to have to work, right?
Well, it sounded like it was 60% 5 years, and then
Right.
like 2.5, so 7.5 years. For the entire project, which I mean, really only is 2.5 years less than 10. 10 feels like a lot too. I mean, there's a combination, I'll just tell you, of, anticipation from years ago when we, thought about having a town center here, right? And what that all might bring to the community. And also too is just the understanding that the longer this project takes, the more expensive it'll become. And then, just as Mr. Barlow was saying, if you have to come back for changes in the plan, variances, things of that nature, just to kind of, drop a pin on 10 years, really actually probably, I mean, let's kind of just put in practicality, would, if there are issues, could potentially extend it up to 15, maybe even 20 years. And that, I think, for the township, wouldn't be an ideal scenario, right? I mean, just from that perspective, that's all.
So, yeah, I understand. It's a point well taken. I understand how sometimes projects get delayed. So
We've seen it all the time, and it's not to say that that's going to happen here, but I think the idea that the mayor's trying to put forward, and again, not just with you, right, but with any new development is to try to figure out how we mitigate those projects that end up going on for long periods of time. And then certainly things slip through the cracks and certain things don't happen when they should have happened that are part of, the application, et cetera, et cetera. So some of it is us needing to do our due diligence and, our homework to make sure that we're doing right by the residents. So,
Understood.
I'm just suggesting here, maybe if you're looking at it as 7.5 years with, the hope that you do get, more than 50% done in 5, that's the most ideal. But obviously your client has to agree to it. That's all.
Well,
Well, I
just
mean,
to
the board-
clarify, the client doesn't have to agree to it. It would be helpful. It's the
I'm sorry.
board's,
They don't have to agree to it. Understood.
it's the
Right.
board's pleasure based on the evidence that's been presented. And Ms. Elgar, just to clarify, you would agree that as each phase comes before the board as a site plan, potentially the need for variances, except subdivisions, that developers agreements will be entered into during those phases.
I would
Of
anticipate.
course.
I mean, if we could do one, great. And if if each phase requires another one, then that's what we're willing to do.
Okay.
And I'm just going to say something here, Madam Chair, and just say again, I mean, I think Mr. Almbach knows this about me, is that when those plans come before us again, I mean, the mayor has his way, and I also have the things that I am fairly critical about. And full transparency, I've seen some preliminary elevations, but I've seen 2 different ones. I'm not sure which one's right, not. And when you're before us, also trying to set that time limit is because I have been very critical of certain, elevations that other, applicants have come before with, where they have to go back to the drawing board. And so how much time did that add on to it, Just, again, just trying to reiterate some perspective here, not that anyone's being penalized here.
All right, Mr. Barlow, what are we gonna do? Because we have several other applications on tonight.
Absolutely. If the board members don't have any additional questions, it would be appropriate to open it to the public. And then once public is closed, if it's the board's pleasure to move on approving the GDP, we can talk about the parameters.
Okay, well, does the board have any more questions of the attorney and Mr. Allenbeck? Or if not, we can open it to the public.
Madam Chair, if I may, this was just another item that we had discussed at the prior hearing. I know Mika had brought up concerns about the location of the town square and the applicant possibly looking at the redesign of that square to create more of a focal point. Is that something that the applicant is, we could put as a condition, if approved, a condition of this approval, that they give some consideration to, again, that location of the town square? That's such an important feature of this project. And Mika, if you want to jump in, please feel free. But I know you brought it up. You really stressed it at the last hearing.
So you mean the location of the actual square, or the location of some features in the square?
Well, the town square itself, I mean, it's surrounded by parking. It's not very pedestrian friendly. Again, I understand that when you come before the board for these phases, it's going to be more detailed, but maybe there can be some consideration given shifting it somewhat more to a central location.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Ms. Cochran. Madam Chair, Ms. Elgart, I think last time we had a bit of discussion. Again, the intent of the town center zone was to create this kind of a public focal point. And I think some of the questions, again, given that it's a GDP, it's a conceptual plan, there was parking all around it. Maybe you want to kind of incorporate that design more central to your town center, and discussion. Again, as you update your plan, maybe those discussions, because I think couple of discussions were also kind of adding pocket parks throughout the development, creating that kind of cohesive open space passive recreation area. I think discussion was maybe the one clubhouse, which is to one side of the property, maybe adding something to that effect. Again, we had discussed the bike path and how it's surrounding and not adjacent to the roadway, which is what the ordinance requires. So I think the discussion was lending itself to maybe these things can be worked on as the plans are, enhanced or created in more detail. I think that's what Ms. Cochran is going to.
I mean, it's hard to say that. I mean, of course, we're going to work with the town. I don't know about moving the town square just because where it is located appears to be centralized in the sense that, you're going to have an entryway right there. It's going to be accessible to the public. So, to move it further into the development, I'm not so, I just I can't agree to that, in terms of actually moving it. I would say that I know that for a fact, we will definitely work with the board and the professionals to, make sure that it's a vision that they're happy with. But to have it as a condition, I'm not sure that we could actually move it. And we can work on it and take suggestions.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
If I can, Irina,
Mhm.
again, we did speak about that, and Mika and Dawn are both correct. And, obviously, as a developer, we want the best plan for not just for ourselves, but for the town as well. So obviously, we're willing to work with the town, and, should the town act favorably on this application for GDP, obviously, it's going to be a collaboration as we move forward with site plans. It's not saying I'm pulling the trigger tomorrow morning to start site plans on this layout. Obviously, it's something that we could talk to staff and the township and get some feedback from them. There's going to be some give and take. There's going to be some reasons why we feel it's strong. It should be in this location. You feel strongly, and there's going to be some give and take, and hopefully we can come and compromise on some of these aspects. But certainly, we're willing to work with the township and its professional staff to make the best plan for everybody.
May I, Reverend Kenny, may I ask a question in regards to what phase is going to be done first? Town center or the housing? Or I was under impression, maybe I'm not getting it right, that the town center, this is the major part of this project. Was that going to be done last or first or when?
Reverend Kenny, the current plans you have before you with the phasing plan show some residential, some commercial, but it also includes the public plaza in phase 1.
Okay, yeah, we got phases, but we just, I've seen projects go on for 15, 20 years, and the phases doesn't get done. And I'm a little concerned about it, because I'm getting old, and I'd like to see some of this stuff get done.
Yeah,
Us too, though. So,
And to defend Reverend Kenny's statements, he currently lives where he could easily access the town center once it's built. And I understand a lot of us are anticipating that. And I do want to say just one other thing, when we talk about, approving this tonight, and Ron, to your point, saying, if we're voting favorably on this, I'm not sure what that exactly means, that you're going to work with us. But, I will say one thing. I wasn't at the last meeting, and I was a little disappointed because some of originally the plans were that that the developer was going to maintain the property. There wasn't going to be this a separate HOA. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I've heard potentially that's changing. So again, antennas are a little bit up here. We've got to stay ahead of it, because some of those first meetings we were told, hey, this is going to be a property where our main offices are going to be. I'm not sure if that's really the case anymore. Not that that's a requirement, but that's what we were told. Hey, we're going to, we want this to be the best possible. We're going to manage it because we don't trust anyone else to manage the property the way we would, up to our snuff. And that's what I was told in some of those initial conversations with the town. So if you can imagine, the mayor's probably been doing this well longer than I have. I'm just in on those first initial phases, and I am also a little hesitant because now, hearing one thing, it changing, not that it had to be a guarantee, but understand my point of view is we questioned how the property be maintained. We're told the developer was going to maintain the property. That's in fact what I heard is not happening anymore, that there will be an HOA. I don't know if that's right or not right, but it's something that I've just heard recently. So again, just want to say and take a vote on it, but also to make the applicant, you also aware of the reasoning why behind we just really want to put some things in place here to protect.
I think part of that, what you had mentioned in terms of the discussions, and I'm not sure that there will be an HOA, but part of the discussions that I think you're referring to had to do with when we were discussing a redevelopment plan for the area, and which included another parcel, which is where we're talking about our corporate offices going.
Well, that's the corporate offices, but my concern more lied with the residential piece, with the maintenance of those areas. It was my understanding from some of those initial meetings that the M&M was going to be maintaining the property of like the townhome areas and things of that nature. And my understanding is that's not necessarily the case anymore.
I don't know that that is the case or not, but what I'm trying to say is that those were discussions in terms of who would maintain. That was a discussion had not with regard to this particular application.
But Councilwoman Cahill, our office is still moving there, and I know
Right.
it may be on the adjoining parcel. So it is going to be our corporate headquarters. So we do have, obviously an interest in the maintenance of the property, no matter who maintains it, because it's going to be our corporate headquarters. So,
Okay,
again,
fair
as we move
statement.
through the process-
If that's any
Understood.
consolation.
No, it's a fair statement because yeah, you'll be there. You'll have to look at it every day.
So where are we going? What are we doing? Is there any more discussion? Personally, what are we voting on? What's the proposal that we vote on? The whole GDP? Is there an outside date for us to complete the GDP? Are we going to include a first phase goal of what, 3 years, 4 years? It's just seems so unclear as to what we're voting on.
Fair enough, Madam Chair. Maybe by way of explanation, basically the GDP concept came about because developers that are going to do large projects ran the risk of the zoning changed while things were going through the process. And the GDP, for big malls, projects like this over 1,000 units, it allows them up to 20 years, and it's the board's pleasure, 5, 10, 7.5, 12, 13. Once the GDP, the general plan that's before you, the general plan is approved, the applicant is free that the township can't change the zoning in 4 years and they're out of luck because their approval's only good for a certain amount of years, 3 years in some situations, 2 years in others. So it gives them long-term certainty because they know the project's going to take longer. But the board always is going to retain their duties, which are site plan. So when they go to build portions of it, I assume they're going to come before the board, and for this phase 1, this is how it's going to be laid out. This is where the sidewalks are going to be, the lighting plans, the landscaping plans, all the things you would normally see. And the board is going to hear the specifics of it as those matters come up. Whereas this is the general plan. This is what we want to do. Here's our overall concept. And the board can approve the concept. Think of it that way. You're approving the general plan and the concept, understanding the applicant's going to come back before you for the specifics of it. And a lot of the questions that got asked will be dealt with that site plan and developer's agreement. You have not seen the end of this. This is the beginning. So That's why you heard 20 years, because the statute says the longest it could possibly be is 20. But the board, after considering the evidence, comes up with either what they feel is appropriate, or can just say, no, we're not going to approve a general development plan, deny it, and then the applicants kind of on their own to try and figure out how to proceed. The standard, just so the board's aware, the standard is there sufficient evidence to support a determination that the proposed general development plan would not have an unreasonably adverse impact. So that's what you're looking at. Does what I've heard so far, does it have an unreasonable adverse impact on the area? If it doesn't, then you get into the things of how long and any conditions or things they've agreed to during their 2 hearings. Generally speaking, Ms. Elgart, you agree with that?
I do.
Okay.
Very.
There's one issue I have to raise now, just because
Mhm.
it came up during the context of this hearing, and it affects this specifically. I'm not sure, Councilwoman Cahill, did you review the transcript of last month's meeting?
Not in full.
So we only have 5 members, Irina, right now, because of sickness, being out of state, things of that nature beyond our control. And Laura was contacting me all day trying to figure out how many members we were going to have. So it doesn't sound like Ms. Cahill has reviewed the whole transcript, so I don't think it's appropriate for her to vote. I only have 4 voting members.
Well, I mean, I guess
That's
We'll
pretty
put
much
you on
it.
first. I don't know what else to tell you. We only have 4 voting members. It really,
no, but I would think that I would be amenable to the fact that Ms. Cahill knows this project. She has reviewed portions of the July transcript, so I would waive that requirement. And I think that requirement is something that the applicant can waive.
as long as we're on the record, I didn't want to
I
there to be
appreciate
an issue. Believe me, Ms. Cahill's, other than the mayor, is probably as familiar as anyone about
Right,
what's been going on there. So I don't have any issue with that. I just didn't want the record to be unclear.
And I appreciate that.
Okay.
With the approval of a GDP, would it be accompanied by an estimation of the first phase and the time when the first phase would be completed, and an estimation of the time period for the first phase to be completed, and what it is, like residential, or I think Ms. Arena mentioned several things, the town center.
They've outlined what the different phases are. Phase 1, phase 2, that is part of the plan. And again, whatever the board's pleasure is, the board's pleasure. But within an approval, potentially or theoretically, it could be a 7.5-year GDP timeframe with a phasing where 60% of the project must be completed within the first 5 years. Hypothetically, that's something the board could do. And then the applicant would go through their phases and attempt to, would comply with that. And if there are reasons beyond their control that they can't, the statute says they get to come back before the board and say, look, financing was an issue, or there was a COVID pandemic, or, whatever else there might be that would allow them to ask for additional time. So that's what I would foresee an approval being.
In time, I'm sorry, this is Dawn again. Just a quick question. I know at the prior hearing, we had talked about a few other minor things, but things that I believe the applicant agreed to add to the plan, such as like the bedroom distribution, the clubhouse, as I believe Ron or Irina mentioned. I think the parking plan had to be revised. Is this the time, and is this appropriate to tie those conditions to this approval if granted?
I would think for the most part, I guess we would have to go through the conditions, but I believe a lot of them had to do with, just labeling the landscape buffer that we were going to put between the townhouses and the single family. The 2 clubhouses, I believe they were of that kind of nature that it would be appropriate now.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I would think anything the applicant agreed to during the course of the 3 hearings now would be appropriate. And and as Irina indicated, some of them are housekeeping or labeling,
Correct.
but they would certainly be part of, anything they've agreed to would certainly be part of any general development plan approval.
And Mr. Barlow, just one more thing to add. I think last time we had raised that one of the requirement was dedicated bike lanes. It's understood that won't be able, they are providing a bike path, a multi-purpose path, but it's not dedicated bike lane on the primary access road. So does that, do we want to factor in that as a variance right now, or is that something during the site plan they'll be coming in for?
Again, I don't think, I think you said the word variance. We're not getting into variances right
Okay.
now or waivers or deviations. If that's something, then I think some of the testimony was there were county roads, Ron, or some of it, I think was untenable.
I think Betsy Dolan was going to look at it
Yeah.
and let me know what existed now. And so we were going to then figure out what we could and could not comply with.
Okay.
So that certainly,
They had to pertain to Skiles Avenue.
So I think it's something that will be revisited as the
Correct.
plans get fleshed out. I think everybody wants them. It's just a question of what's feasible.
correct.
Thank you.
So the mayor put forth a proposal of approval with a 5-year.
Chair, we got it open up to the public.
Yeah, open to the
Right.
public.
Okay.
first.
Well, let's open it to the public, Miss Barlow. I mean, Miss Buckley. Members of the public, you've heard our discussion. Would anyone in the public like to do they have any comments or questions at this time?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, close to the public. So the mayor's proposal was approval with a 5-year goal.
7.5 years total.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, again, I'm just going to try and condense it.
Yep.
The board members can correct me. If the motion would be for a GDP approval for 7.5 years with a phasing plan that 60% of it would be completed within 60% would be completed within the first 5 years, along with all of the conditions the applicant had agreed to during the course of the 3 hearings, and that you outlined earlier, Dawn.
And can I also state, I think it's important to mention that the only uses that are to be permitted in this development are those listed in the town center zoning ordinance. Just want to have that on the record. Like, we don't want to see them coming in for anything that's outside of those permitted uses. And I think they agreed to that. I think Ron did state that. Okay.
Okay. So well, I'm not on the board. I think I've outlined it. So Dawn or someone else wants to make that application or make some different recommendation, and then if there was a second, the board can vote on.
Could you restate?
I can try.
Okay.
So I have
Okay.
something. Okay, so as the chairwoman stated, 7.5 years phasing schedule, 60% done in 5 years. Applicant will agree to add the bedroom distribution to the plans. Applicant will work with staff and the board as the project proceeds, with regard to maybe the redesign of the public square. The applicant, I believe, had agreed to showing the off-street loading locations. The parking plan needed to be revised. The clubhouse needed to be labeled, as did the buffering. And again, just the only uses to be permitted are those within the TC zoning ordinance.
And I believe Dawn also the bike lanes on Skiles.
Okay,
to
thank
tie
you.
into theirs.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion that we
Thank you.
approve the GDP with the stipulations that Ms. Corcoran outlined.
Do I have a second?
I think that is the second, Madam Chair. I think Dawn made the motion and
Okay.
Councilman Cahill seconded.
All right, fine. Thank you.
Sorry.
Roll call, Miss
Mayor Waller?
Mayor.
Yes.
Wow, you have comments? Or are you calling the roll?
I'm calling the roll.
Okay, go ahead.
Mayor Waller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran,
Yes.
Reverend Kenny,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. Okay, we have a GDP approval.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Yep.
Have a good night.
For the rest of the summer, hopefully,
It's almost over.
almost over. One more meeting, right?
Mm.
Well, enjoy every moment that we have left.
Yes,
And stay
exactly.
safe, everyone.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Take care. Good night.
Thanks.
Madam
Number
Chair-
14, Madam Chair.
Madam
Yes,
Chair,
okay. Thank you.
this is
Someone else
Mika.
said?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is Mika. I think my associate Ron Reinerston will be joining and I'll be jumping off. So just wanted to say that.
Good night, Mika.
Oh,
Good night.
the record reflects that Ms. Apte is leaving and being replaced by her associate.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Bye. Good night. Good night,
Good night.
everyone.
Good night.
Hmm.
Okay, item number 14, 24 PB04AGI for a deviation on block 3502 lots L103. Is that L10? No, 1.03. Boy, eyesight. Zone redevelopment.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? I just had a issue with the camera.
So far, I hear you. I don't know if I see you.
You just can't see me. Sorry about that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Mhm.
My name is Shore. I'm an attorney at Sonoma Lake Marin Licata. We're representing the applicant tonight. You saw we actually have 3 applications on for 3 separate properties. We're here tonight to seek a deviation from the redevelopment plan to install address logos on the warehouse buildings. I have 2 witnesses tonight. I have Madison, who's my client. She'll go over the address logos and all the signage. And then we have a professional planner, Allison, tonight to give the testimony to support the deviation.
Okay.
Okay.
Who you want to call first, John?
It would be Madison would call. She would lay the factual basis for the deviations.
Okay, Miss Hedrick, if you could state your name, spell your last name for the record, and give us your professional address, please.
Yep, it is Madison Hedrick, Hedrick, and it's 2820 Crusader Circle, Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Okay, raise your right hand. Swear the testimony you give before this board will be the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
Your witness, counselor.
Thank you. Madison, we're going to start with 150 Old New Brunswick Road. Could you give the board a little detail of what the existing facade signage is on the building?
I can. Would it be easier if I shared my screen to show it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it would.
Yes.
The first proposed sign is it's Prologis' globe and address numbers. Their globe is looking to be 2 foot 6 inches tall, with the address numbers being 15 inches tall. There is a total of 2 of these signs being proposed on this building. Both are 18 square feet total. So the first one is being proposed on the same elevation as the Bob's Discount Furniture sign. And then the second is being proposed on an elevation without any tenant signage.
And could you tell the board
John,
what?
just for purposes of the record, the first photograph will mark as A1, and the second one that says recommend, the second one as A1 is EO. Can you go back? EO2 in the upper left-hand corner, and A2, I believe, had EO3. Thank you.
And then could you provide the board with the total square footage of the existing signage as it is right now? I think it's all the Bob signs.
Yep. Existing square footage is one of the Bob square footage is 222 square feet, and then the second Bob sign is 124 for a total of 346.
And the deviation comes into play because under the redevelopment plan, you can only have a maximum of 150 square feet. So it's already over for the Bob's signs, but we're adding the additional, as Madison said, the additional approximately 18 square feet for these address logos. So that's one of the deviations. The other deviation is the number of signage. So we're adding the 2 address logos, which would be in addition to the permitted 2 signs already. Madison, could you go over the reason for the address logos?
Yeah. So the globe along with the address logos are Prologis's kind of global brand. It makes it very easy for their drivers to find these warehouses quickly from the entrance road. And so they're really wayfinding signs along with address numbers for safety.
Hello? Did we get frozen?
John? Madison, do you have any other exhibits or that's it?
These are just the 2 elevations for the 2 proposed signage. That's all we have.
Okay. Could you unshare your screen? I just looking for where John went.
Yeah.
I don't think John is with us in
I
the
think John is
Zoom
no
anymore.
longer with us.
He's not with us virtually.
Gonna have to wait for the attorney.
Hmm.
Mr. Barlow, we had a few other residents come on after you made your initial announcements about Eleanor and Deanie, so maybe you just want to tell them that they were both postponed one more time.
Certainly.
Thank you.
I didn't see anybody else check in. If anyone is here for number 17, Deanie Communications, just 24 PB02/12V, preliminary and final site plan and bulk variances. That matter is not going to be heard this evening. The applicant's notice was defective.
Hello?
John's here.
Just hold on a second, John.
Can you hear?
Yes.
Sure. Sorry about that.
The notice was defective. They will have to renotice. You should get a new notice in the mail, and if their notice is appropriate, they will be heard at the September 11th meeting. Eleanor Properties, which is 24 PB 08 and 09, was postponed at the applicant's request to September 11th. Their notices were in conformity with the statute, so you will not get any further notice if you're here for LRN Properties, which is 60 Normandy Drive, and that will also be heard on September 11th, 2024. And
Thank
John,
you.
I guess you're back with us.
Yeah, I'm going to do it. I don't know. My Zoom just kind of froze and it's not responding. So I'll do it over the phone. I guess we left off. I was asking Madison if she could explain to the board why they use these address logos.
Yeah. So Prologis uses these logos kind of as wayfinder signs for their drivers to identify their buildings from a distance, since they put these logos and the address tiles on all of their buildings globally.
So it makes it easier for the driver when they're driving in with the semi to get to the building and recognize the building. So it's kind of a safety issue, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know if I was cut off before, but I was basically going over the relief we were seeking. So with the 2 existing Bob signs on there, we were seeking a deviation to put these 2 address logo signs in there. We were also seeking a deviation from the development plan where the maximum signage they permit is 150 square feet. The Bob's signs already put it over that maximum, and we're only adding an additional 18 square feet with these address logos. So that's basically the signage and the relief we're seeking for the 150 New Brunswick Avenue. Does the board have any questions for Madison at all?
Yeah. Well, does the board have any questions for Ms. Hedrick?
I have
Hearing-
one question,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Mhm, mhm.
Ms. Hedrick, this is Ron Reinerson, the planner.
Yes.
If I'm driving in this area and I'm just trying to find this address, will these address logos help me in my wayfinding?
They
Rather
do.
than slowing my car down, I can see it?
Yes, so they're
Thank
on
you.
they're on the corner near the entrance.
Okay, I just want to know that, it helps us and it helps the public. Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the board? Okay, was this testimony only for one building? Do you have more testimony of Ms. Hendrick?
Not for this
Well,
application, I
she-
assume.
Not
Okay,
for
do you-
150, but I have testimony for the other two buildings from her.
Well, let's,
Keep them
Do
separate.
you want her to
let's
go?
open it to,
No.
should we do it all at one time, Mr. Barlow, and open it to the public after all three?
No,
buildings?
Chairwoman, let him finish his presentation. I believe he's going to call Ms. Coffin to testify. Then you can, if anybody from the public has any questions,
Okay,
and then do each one separately.
So, okay, thank you.
okay.
Yeah, I would like to call Allison Kaufman, our professional planner, to provide testimony to justify the deviation.
Okay, Ms. Coffin, if you could state your name, spell your last name for the record, and give us your professional address.
Sure. Allison Coffin, that's Coffin. I work for James W. Higgins Associates. We're at 14 Tilton Drive in Ocean Township, New Jersey.
You raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you give before this board will be the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
You're a witness, sir.
Yes, hi, good evening, Allison. Could you go through your testimony to provide the board with, evidence of why or support of why the deviation is, viable in this case?
John, you
Sure.
want to qualify her as an expert first?
Sure, I didn't, sorry. Allison, could you provide your qualifications and whether you appeared before this board or not?
Sure. I have a bachelor's degree from Boston College. I'm a licensed planner by the a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I'm certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners. I've had my license and certification for almost 2 decades now. I've appeared in front of boards in more than 100 communities, a great many times in Piscataway, although I'm generally at your zoning board.
Thank you. She's acceptable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Allison,
So-
can you provide some testimony to the board? Thank you.
Sure. The property we're looking at 150 Old New Brunswick Road is a little over 40 acres. It's developed with a warehouse that's 622,000 square feet, and it has frontages on Old New Brunswick Road, Roma Boulevard, and to the north, it backs up to the Conrail Port Reading Railroad. The applicant is requesting deviations from the redevelopment zone plan to add 2 logo signs and a street address signs. And this requires relief or deviation from that plan for the number of wall signs and the total square footage of wall signs. The redevelopment plan does treat this sort of relief similar to the way the municipal land use law treats bulk variance, C variances. So I'm going to go through the C variance testimony for this. I believe this can be justified under the C2 standard, which is justified when the variance advances the purposes of the municipal land use law and the benefits outweigh the detriments. It's my opinion that these signs advance the purposes of the municipal land use law. The primary purpose is to promote public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. And the signs proposed advance this purpose by providing for clear identification of the building from the adjacent roadway systems for the tractor trailer drivers who are approaching the site. Providing that clear identification for the site and its uses promotes public safety by allowing drivers of the vehicles approaching the site to have adequate identification of their destination from the adjacent roadway system, which allows drivers to more readily identify their destination and navigate safely and quickly to the site. The benefits here outweigh the detriments. The primary benefit is promoting public safety through the safe identification of the site, which is a critical traffic control and safety measure for industrial areas and uses. It's my opinion that there's no detriment to the public good that results from these variances. These signs that are being added at 18 square feet are not significantly visually obstructive. They're small, and they're probably the smallest that you need to provide this service. The signs are passive structures. They have no impact regarding traffic, noise, or odors. The only detriment you could have for a sign are aesthetics or safety. And here the signs are properly scaled to the structures in the site. They don't have a significant detrimental impact to aesthetics. And as far as safety, the signs promote safety. They're not located in a way that causes a visual obstruction or distraction. There's no illumination that would create glare to the roadway. So since it's my opinion that there's a significant benefit to public safety and no detriment to the public good, the benefits outweigh the detriments, and approval of the variances would not impair the intent and purpose of your redevelopment plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions of this witness?
Well,
No.
I just want to ask one thing. Let me just get my camera open here. Actually, no. Ms. Kaufman, how are you?
Okay, how are you?
Oh, just great. Give my regards to Jim Higgins because I'm a substitute planner for him at Ocean a lot.
Okay.
Anyway, conflict planner. So basically, it's not only for the truck drivers, but it's the public at whole, right? Right.
Yes.
For these signage. And
Yes,
would it be your professional opinion that these signage regulations are more to advertising rather than like this is more a wayfinding thing?
Absolutely.
An address.
Absolutely. I mean, most of the sign is the address, and the logo does allow people who are looking specifically, the drivers looking specifically for the Prologis facility to find it quickly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it just the general purpose. That's what I want to get at. The general purpose of the signage regulations are more for advertising, logo,
Yes.
logo thing. This is not a logo thing. This is
No.
okay. Thank you.
This is identification for drivers.
Any other questions of this witness? Okay, do we have another witness for this particular application?
No, we do not.
Okay, so I can open it to the public now?
Absolutely.
Members of the public, you've heard two witnesses regarding this application. Does anyone in the public have any questions of either of these two witnesses?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Close to the public. We're going to get an approval now, or should we move on to the second application, Mr. Barlow?
No, we should vote on this application, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members of the board?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the variation for application 24PB04 for the additional square footage that they need for the signage.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Madam Chair, Reverend
We
Kenny, I'll
also-
second it.
Thank you.
Excuse me, we also need it for the number of signs.
There's
Okay,
an amendment?
my motion is also for the number of signs and the square footage. Thank you,
That
Madam.
would be correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reverend Kenny, you approve it as amended?
Yes, as amended for the square footage and the additional 2 signs. So I approve.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Waller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran,
Yes.
Reverend Kenny,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. Yes, you didn't hear me. Okay, you can proceed with your second application. Let me make the my printer printed it out and okay. Application number 2, deviation is 15 is 24 PB05 AGI deviation for block 3502, lot 6.02.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, my name is John Renschel. I'm an attorney at Township, Maryland, Licata. We're here representing the applicant on this matter. The address is 1570 South Washington Avenue. The applicant is seeking to install 4 address logos on this warehouse building. Once again, I got my 2 witnesses. If we can get Madison up, we could swear her in and move this along.
Okay. Ms. Hedrick, you understand you're still under oath and you haven't moved since last time I asked you what your address was.
Yes.
Okay, you're still under oath. You're a witness, John.
Thank you. Madison, could you provide the board with a little explanation of what we're proposing to install at this property?
I can. At 1570 South Washington Avenue, I'm gonna pull up the photos for you all. Do you need to make these into exhibits as well?
Yep, so A1 will be the one that has E03 in the top left-hand corner.
There are 4 total.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
no problem.
All 4 signs are looking to be about around 12 square foot each, with the globes being 36 inches and numbers being 15. All 4 are placed strategically for driver visibility while trying to locate the buildings. This is the first one, which was indicated as A1. This is the second sign being proposed, which is A2. The third sign being proposed, which will be noted as A3, and the fourth and final sign being proposed, which will be noted as A4. All are replacing existing address numbers on the building.
Okay, thank you, Madison. I have no further questions on this one.
So just to be clear, there's no issue as to the square footage. You're just seeking 4 signs where 2 are
No,
required.
it's about number for deviation.
Okay, you may call your next.
Madam Chair, if I could I apologize, Madison, or Ms. Hedrick, could you put that back up again? So, but the sign proposals are all for existing locations of numbers on the buildings already, or there were additional 2? I just want to make sure.
All 4 are where there are existing numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions of this witness? Members of the board? Okay, you may proceed with your next witness.
All right, Allison?
Okay, Ms. Coffin, I
would you
also just want to remind you, you're under oath. I presume your qualifications remain unchanged and you still work for Mr. Higgins.
That's correct.
Okay, you're a witness.
Thank you, Allison. Could you provide the board with a detailed explanation of to support the deviation for this property?
So this property is 1570 South Washington Avenue. It's a 21-acre site that's developed with a 216,000 square foot warehouse building. It's got at the intersection of Centennial and South Washington Avenues, and also has frontage on a road called Access Road. And the signs require deviations from the redevelopment zone for the number of wall signs, where we're proposing 4 and 2 are permitted. As with the previous application, these signs can be granted under what's similar to the C2 variance. They advance the purpose of the municipal land use law with regard to promoting public safety. They allow for drivers to have a quick and easy identification of this property, which is a public safety benefit. There's no detriment. The signs, again, are still passive structures. They are not going to create an aesthetic problem. They're spread out on different corners of the building. They cause no visual obstruction or distraction, and therefore the benefits of these variances or deviations outweigh the detriments, and they do not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the redevelopment plan. Again, the signage ordinance, as Mr. Reinerstein pointed out with the previous application, addresses more advertising style signages, and these are wayfinding signs, and as such, they would not, having 4 of them would not impede your redevelopment plan.
Okay.
Thank you, Allison. I have no further questions.
Are there any other questions of either of these 2 witnesses from the board?
Can I get one clarification? Are we over the 150 square feet cumulative?
No, we're not.
You're okay?
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ron. Any other questions from the board? Okay, I'm going to open it to the members of the public. Members of the public, if you have any questions of the 2 witnesses that you heard on this application, would you indicate by raising your hand?
No one, Madam Chair.
Closed to the public. Okay. Members of the board, do you have any questions or would you like to make
Madam Chair, this is Councilwoman Cahill. I'd make a motion that we approve, okay, let me make sure I say right. Application 24 PB 05 for, the replacement of the number signs for the Prologis sign with number as a wayfinder sign. And that, honestly, Mr. Barlow, I'm not sure since they're existing new number signs. I mean, is it just the square footage or is it the number of signs as it was in the last application?
The only relief they're seeking is the deviation for 4 signs where 2 are allowed under the
So
redevelopment.
that would be my proposal is that we accept and grant that variance for the 4 signs.
Do I have a second?
Evan Kenny, I'll second that.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mayor Waller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran,
Yes.
Reverend Kenny,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. Item number 15, 24 PB 05, AGI deviation blocks 3502, lots 6.02.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, John Rentschler from Sonoma Lake, Maryland, Licata, representing the applicant in this matter. This is 600 Ridge Road. We're seeking a deviation from the redevelopment plan to add 2 address logos, but there's also the issue that the maximum height of the signage can only be 35 feet above grade. Where one sign is 37 feet 1 inch and a quarter above grade, and the other sign is 38 feet 1 inch and 1/2 inches above grade. So that we're seeking 2 deviations here for the number of signage and the height of the signs. Once again, I have the 2 witnesses that I'd like to present.
Okay.
If we could get Madison back up.
Ms. Hedrick, again, I just remind you, you're still under oath, and I assume everything else has remained the same.
You are correct.
All right. Your witness.
So Madison, just once again, can you detail the proposed signage that we're proposing for this property, the 2 address logo signs, and also, I guess, confirm the height of each sign?
Yep. So there are 2 address logo signs being proposed on this building, both with the globe being 36 inches and the numbers being 18. Each address sign is roughly 13.8 square feet, adding a total of around 27 square feet of signage to the building. The first one, EO1, we will notate is A1, which is shown here. And then on the next page is our elevations showing where the sign is from grade to top of sign. It is 37 feet, 1 1/4 inch. And then on the second sign, which we will notate as A2, same idea, 36-inch globe with 18-inch numbers, adding roughly 13.8 square feet of signage. And this is the elevation showing that from top of sign to grade is 38 feet, 1 1/2 inch.
I don't think this picture changed, Madison, unless EO1 is the first one.
Oh, it didn't share. Yep. I can try and re-share it. I apologize. Are we changing screens now?
Okay, there's the height, 37 and 1 1/4 inch.
Yep, this is the first sign, 37 1 1/4 inch from grade to top of sign. And then the second proposed sign is 38 1 1/2 inch from grade to top of sign.
Just Madison, real quick, the height at which this is going, is that the height at where the existing address is?
Yes, it is. It's centered. It's centered in the same location, just knowing that these are slightly larger than the existing.
Thank you.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. You can question the next witness then.
Want to unshare, Ms. Hedrick?
Thank you.
Ms. Coffin, are you up, I guess?
Think so.
Yes.
I remind you, you're still under oath, your qualifications and everything else remains the same, correct?
Still licensed.
Perfect. I'd hate to think there was a 9 o'clock cancellation.
Nope. I have till midnight until I turn back to a pumpkin.
Your witness, sir.
Thank you. All right, Allison, last one. Just give the board the detail to support the deviation from the redevelopment plan.
Yeah, we're looking at 600 Ridge Road. This is a property that is developed with a warehouse, and the applicant is requesting deviations from the redevelopment plan to have 2 wall signs on a facade where one is permitted, and to have sign heights that exceed 35 feet. My testimony may sound familiar to the board. It could be granted under what is similar to the C2 variance, that it advances the purposes of the municipal land use law with regard to promoting public safety, and that these signs provide for clear identification of the buildings from the adjacent roadway systems for large tractor trailers and passenger cars that are approaching the site. The benefits outweigh the detriments, the primary benefit being the advancement of public safety. And again, there's no detriment that results from these signs. They're passive structures. They're not going to have any harm to aesthetics or safety. It's a little different from the other two in that we have a height variance, but in this case, the height is consistent with what's already on the building and is properly, the signs are properly located on the building structure to provide the benefit that they need to in terms of identification. And as there is significant benefit to public safety and no detriment to the public good that results from these deviations, the benefits outweigh the detriments. And these deviations would not impair the intent of the redevelopment plan, as these are wayfinding signs. They're small in scale, and they do not impede the larger intent of controlling larger advertising signs on the structures.
Thank you, Allison.
You're welcome.
I have no further questions.
Board members, do you have any questions of these 2 witnesses?
Madam Chair, I have one question for Ms. Corcoran.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Dawn, because this is an older plan, are we in agreement that the 2 deviations that were outlined by the planner is what's needed? Because I had raised some issues in my letter, and if you're satisfied with those 2 deviations, then everything else is settled.
I am satisfied unless, again, you see something that.
No. There was some weird definitions about monument signs and such, and really, I'm satisfied with the testimony here, that they need 2 deviations, and the rest is satisfied with this testimony.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, I'm going to open it up to the public now. Members of the public, if you have any questions of this witness, would you indicate by raising your hand on the screen?
No, Madam Chair.
Closed to the public. Do you have any summation on your 3 applications? No, we're just going to approve this last application. Do you have any summary on this application?
No, I'm good, Madam Chair. Thank you. It's been a long night.
Yes. Board members, what's your pleasure?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve application 24 PB06 for the 2 deviations, which include the height and the number of the signs. Did I get that correct, Mr. Barlow? Okay.
Hit
good.
a home run.
Thank
Yes,
you.
no, we are in concurrence.
3rd time's a charm.
Second, do I get a second?
It's Reverend Kenny. I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Waller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran,
Yes.
Reverend Kenny,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. Thank you. We've completed those 3 applications, I believe.
I'd like to thank everybody and everyone have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Item number 19, discussion to authorize Foresight Planning to conduct an area in need of redevelopment study for blocks 7305, lot 19.01, 20, and 21.
Madam Chair, the council has asked that we undertake a preliminary investigation for those properties, and in order to do so, we will need to retain the services of a planner. And we would discuss to authorize Foresight Planning to do so. The board has any questions?
Do you have any questions, board members? Hearing no questions, this is not a matter that we have to present to the public.
Correct.
Do I have a
Motion.
motion, please?
I'll make that motion. Dawn Corcoran.
Madam Chair, I'll second that. Councilwoman.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mayor Waller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran,
Yes.
Reverend Kenny,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes.
And Madam Chair, I prepared a resolution in the anticipation that the board might act favorably if the board would like to adopt said resolution.
Madam Chair, Reverend Kenny, I'd like to adopt a resolution for this Rivercrest and Orchard Street. That's 5160 and 5170.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. Councilwoman Cahill.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Waller,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Corcoran,
Yes.
Reverend Kenny,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. Item number 20, motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you. I don't even think we need a second. We're all out anyway.
All in favor?
Aye.
Or an adjournment, as Laura spelled
Adjournment.
it.
See
Yes,
you
I
in
saw that.
September.
Okay,
Happy
everybody, see you in September. Everybody
In
have
September.
a wonderful end of summer.
Enjoy the rest of
Good
your
night,
summer,
everyone.
everyone.